The biggest names in sports are all on IsraelSportsRadio.com.
From the ACI studios in downtown Talpiot, Jerusalem, it's Lewis Live. Now here's your host, me, Ari Lewis. Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well up there. Hope everyone's staying safe. I appreciate everyone listening to the show. Tonight we're here till midnight, Israel time. Thank you so much for joining us. I do not want to waste any time. I want to get to our guest right away. This is a huge honor and a privilege to have this gentleman on Lewis Live tonight. He was the original owner of the Phoenix Suns. He was involved with the 1987 NFL replacement players and promoted Muhammad Ali versus Joe Frazier. It's a huge honor to have Mr. Shelly Saltman on the show. How are you doing today, Mr. Saltman?
Fine, Harry, but my name is Shelly.
Shelly, okay. All right, so beyond
80 years ago, my mother called me Sheldon.
I apologize.
Or sometimes when she was upset with me, she'd say, Zindel, Try.
I never got those names as a kid because actually my Hebrew name is Yehuda, and then I was always go by Ari. I never got that. Whenever I got in trouble, it was just always Ari. I never got one of those. Like my friend, he has a middle name, and that's a killer because when you get in trouble, then you're called by all three names, and you know it's serious stuff.
That's true.
There's so many places to begin with your career. Very, very accomplished career, very historic. I'm from Arizona.
Never held, Ari, you have to understand. First of all, my late wife, may she rest in peace, Molly, used to say an expert, the definition of expert is somebody who's away from home. And I was always away from home. Whether it was a sports event in Russia or the Olympics or traveling with my friend Andy Williams, who is a big singer here in the United States, I was always away from home. Anyway, I'm delighted to be here. Just ask any questions you want. I'm open to answer.
Oh, thank you so much. Again, this is a huge honor and privilege to have you on Lewis Live. And I am originally from Phoenix, Arizona, grew up there, grew up as a big Suns fan, and come to find you're the original owner of the Phoenix Suns.
Well, I'm not by myself. There were a whole bunch of us, Andy Williams, myself, Dick Block, all University of Arizona roommates together, Dick Block, Don Diamond, and Don Pritzker. But it was all a bunch of good boys with a lot of Zionist background.
Sure, that's something we definitely appreciate here on Israel Sports Radio, of course. And how did that come about? How did you guys decide, hey, let's invest in a team, let's purchase a team, and why in particular Phoenix?
Well, really nothing very, very exciting about that. I was very close to J. Walter Kennedy, who was the commissioner at the time of the NBA, and he said, hey, we're going to expand, and we're going to expand into 2 new cities. And along came Dick Block, who at the time was the chairman of the board of Filmways, along with Don Diamond, who was a successful trader and mercantile trader, and Don Pritzker, Don Pitt, who was a successful lawyer in Phoenix, and they put together a group. Then they came to our group called Barnaby Sports, which basically was Andy Williams, Larry Cardigan, and myself, and then to a law firm, our law firm, Rosenfeld, Sussman, and Meyer, and they put together a bunch of people, and suddenly we had the investment capital and the desire, and the team came about.
An interesting story with the Suns and their origination that they were going to get the number 1 pick, but they lost to a coin toss to the Milwaukee Bucks.
Oh yeah, that's the truism. What happened, and here the brilliance of Larry Cardigan, our attorney, came into play. Milwaukee came into the league the same year as us. I believe it was '67, and there was one great player up that year. His name was Lou Alcindor, who later became Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, the most prolific scorer in the history of the NBA. Well, it had to be a flip coin. J. Walter Kennedy he's the commissioner at the time. He was in New York. We were in Phoenix, and the people from, Herb, oh my goodness, he's a senator now, Herbie Cole was the owner, along with my dear friend Bob Block, in Milwaukee, and the commissioner, in sight of 3 other people, flipped the coin as to who would have the first draft pick, and the draft pick being Lou Alcindor. And Lou Alcindor was the most prolific scorer, not only in the NBA, but probably one of the greatest basketball players ever in the NCAA when he played for UCLA under the great coach John Wooden. So Commissioner Kennedy asked who will call first, and Herbie Cole in Milwaukee, now a senator at the time representing the Milwaukee ownership group, turned around and said the courtesy should go to Phoenix. And we took it, and the commissioner flipped the coin in New York, and we all urged Dick Block to take heads. It came up tails, and Milwaukee got Lou Alcindor. However, not to be outdone, Larry Cardigan knew of a great ball player who had been banned from the NBA because of having gambled on sports, small amount of money, in his freshman year in Iowa by the name of Connie Hawkins. Connie had been playing with what they called Negro basketball in those days, a Negro basketball league, a team called the Rensselaer Five out of Pittsburgh. And he suggested to Connie, sue the NBA, they'll capitulate, and we'll take the rights to Connie. And so we matched Lou Alcindor with Connie Hawkins. However, as great as Connie was, and he was great, Lou Alcindor made the difference for Milwaukee, and it's the only time they ever won a championship.
Yeah, absolutely. Teamed up with Oscar Robertson and won a title in Milwaukee. I guess you learn a valuable lesson, and that tails never fails with a coin toss, right?
I don't know about that.
But the Suns, though, had some pretty good success early. They made it to the NBA Finals in 1976. Were you still with the team at that time?
Oh, no. I had moved on. I had gone on to become president of the Lakers and the Kings under Jack Kent Cooke. And then I left there because I became a founder of a company called Invest West Sports. And we started other things. And one of the things we started was the New Orleans Jazz, who today are the Utah Jazz. And I was executive vice president of that company. And the New Orleans Jazz, New Orleans has a team again, but for some strange reason, they just didn't support the Jazz when they were there, and the Jazz moved to Utah. And where Sam Battistone, my partner, who is a Mormon, brought it home to where he felt to belong, and the Utah Jazz have done very, very well over the years. My last job in sports, except for writing my column and my books and so forth, was when I retired as president of 20th Century Fox Sports in 1980. It's quite a few years.
Well, I want to stick with the Jazz for a few moments because when the Jazz were in New Orleans, a man by the name of Pistol Pete Maravich, one of the most flashy players.
Probably would have been, if he didn't die at too early an age, probably been one of the great, well, he was in a brief while, in the brief flash, he was one of the greatest passers and assist makers in the history of professional basketball.
Absolutely, and really impressive considering that he was a big man and was able to do those things with the basketball. And what I found fascinating about Pistol Pete, he played for some teams that struggled a bit in New Orleans, but he was, I guess to some degree, kind of the man of that city. There wasn't.
No, he really wasn't. Well, he was the man of the city. He was the marquee.
The marquee.
But don't forget, we had Gail Goodrich.
Good point.
Gail Goodrich was the linchpin and the cornerstone. And he made that team go as far as it could go. What we truly lacked, was a big man. Now, when I played ball at the University of Massachusetts, I was 6 feet, and I was considered average height. And my roommate, who was a center, he was only 6'4". Today, if you're 6'4", you're a passing guard. You're too small.
Right.
I mean, these kids today are, they're 7 feet and 6'10", and my pal Ernie Vanderway, whose son Tiki went on to play some pretty good basketball in the NBA. He's only 6'10", and they call him a small forward. Wow.
That's incredible at 6'10". And you had, obviously, some great moments with the Jazz. I'll go back a little bit to the Los Angeles Lakers and some of the players that came through Los Angeles while you had your tenure there with the ball club.
Well, that was the year, if you remember, 1971-72, when they won the record established the record that has still not been broken, 33 straight games. Now, I had nothing to do with that. I was just an executive. But the general manager was Pete Newell, a brilliant, brilliant man who had coached at the University of California, probably next to John Wooden, considered the best college coach of all time. with deference to Coach K at Duke and Bobby Knight at Indiana. However, we had a young shooting guard that I used to shoot around with before the games. He had long hair and a big mustache. He was a sixth man. He was the best sixth man in the league. His name was Pat Riley, and he went on to become a great coach.
Absolutely.
Meanwhile, that team did have Wilt Chamberlain.
Yep.
It had, let's see if I can remember the whole team, Cassie Russell, Happy Hairston, Gail Goodrich, and Mr. Basketball himself, Jerry West. And what you might not know, you know the NBA logo, Ari?
Yes, it's after Jerry West's face. It looks like his face.
It's not his face. It's his whole position, his body structure, his posture while shooting a ball. Take a look at it carefully, and you'll notice that it is Jerry, who still remains a very dear friend. Anyway, that was the team, and it did pretty well.
Absolutely, won an NBA championship. And what I found fascinating about that team, Wilt Chamberlain, who is a superstar in many, many respects, he had more of a smaller role, if you will, on the team. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I kind of felt that was more Jerry West's team. What were your relationships like with Wilt Chamberlain?
No, you're wrong. If I may correct you,
sure, go ahead,
you weren't
please.
there and you're younger. Wilt Chamberlain made that team go when and if he wanted to. If Wilt wanted to make it a 50-point game, he could make it a 50-point game. Wilt Chamberlain was one of the greatest ball players of all time, one of the greatest athletes I've ever known.
Absolutely.
Oh, and my relationship? Great, with all the guys. We're all still friends, and Jerry is going to do marvelous things. He's now, as a matter of fact, a consultant, just left the Lakers. He's a consultant to the San Francisco Warriors, and my friend Michael Goober's brother, Dr. Michael Goober's brother, Peter Goober, who is a successful producer, is now the majority owner of the Warriors. And with Jerry West acting as consultant, look for things to happen. Jerry is probably one of the finest basketball minds. Remember, he's the one who picked Pat Riley to become a coach out of the broadcast booth. And Pat was acting as a color commentator for a great basketball announcer and a man I hired, Chick Hearn. So, but at the same time, back in 1971-72, the man who was the coach, who actually lost his voice in the middle of the season, he himself was a great Hall of Fame ball player, Bill Sherman. And Bill is still with us, not feeling in the best of health, but he's a great guy.
You know, Chick Hearn, even growing up in Arizona, certainly familiar with his work. He came up with the phrase, put it in the deep freeze, I believe. And
among other things, it's in the popcorn machine.
Yep.
That's all she wrote, you know, and he can't think, when talking about Wilt Chamberlain, who probably was the worst foul shooter of all time, despite his prolific scoring, he would turn around and say, oh, my God, he can't hit the ocean with that ball.
And it's truly incredible that many things he said still live on today. That's how much of an influential broadcaster Mr. Hearn was. And you mentioned that Wilt Chamberlain being a great athlete, and I know you've been involved with boxing as well in addition to basketball in the NFL. How realistic was the possibility of Wilt Chamberlain boxing Muhammad Ali?
Well, the background of that story, if you look at the Encyclopedia Britannica, you'll see the picture we posed of Wilt standing over Ali with his arm outstretched over Ali's head, which is huge. We brought, I was with Bob Arum in those days, and we brought Wilt. I flew in with Seymour Goldberg, his manager, and myself to the Houston Astrodome, where we were to sign Wilt to fight Muhammad Ali. And they're downstairs posing for pictures and everything, and Wilt got a call. You have to understand, Wilt was holding out that year for more money from the Lakers. And at that point, I was not involved with the Lakers. I was involved with other things. And suddenly, the call came in, and we didn't know what it was, and if we had a press conference scheduled for upstairs on the 5th floor of the Houston Astrodome, which at the time was one of the 8th wonders of the world, we went up to hold a press conference, myself, Angelo Dundee, Ferdy Pacheco, and Ali. And Ali was brilliant, you know, Wilt is tall, but he will fall, and all the crazy limericks he would make up. And Ali kept talking, and there was no Wilt. Wilt didn't come up. No Wilt. What was happening? Suddenly, Bob Arum come up and whispered in my ear, hey, Wilt is going back to Los Angeles. He's taking the next plane, and he's jilting us. oh my goodness, what do you do? So Angelo Dundee, quick on his feet, he leaned over to Ali, and we grabbed Jimmy Ellis, who had been Ali's boyhood friend, and at one point kind of a paper heavyweight champion in Ali's loss while Ali was in suspension. And he had quickly announced that we put the fight together. Aram actually made the announcement because I was always behind the scenes, the way I like it. Aram made the announcement that we're going to have a fight from two boyhood friends who once were sparring partners, two champions, Muhammad Ali and Jimmy Ellis, and that's how that fight came about, and that's how the fight with Will Chamberlain didn't come about. Now, on reflection, I believe, having spent years, first at my father's knee back in Boston, where he worked with fighters and so forth, and so many fights over the years, I truly believe that Ali would have cut Will Chamberlain to ribbons.
Yeah, great.
If he could get inside Will's powerful reach. If Will held him away and hit him once, he probably would have certainly done a lot of damage.
Yeah, my father used to tell me as a kid, because he brought up the story a lot, that he mentioned this fight was going to take place, and I said, hey, Dad, who would have won? He's like, well, what do you mean? If Ali played Will Chamberlain basketball, Will would win. You know, Ali's
absolutely, your father's right.
Yeah, Ali's heavyweight champion of the world. It's boxing. He's going to win. Now, that Jimmy Ellis story, I find that fascinating because when that fight took place, that was the only fight of Ali's career. Angelo Dundee was not in his corner. He was in Jimmy Ellis's corner.
That is correct.
Yes.
That's it.
So talk a little bit about that.
You know who was in Ali's corner?
I do not know for that fight. Who was in his corner?
Eddie Futch.
Eddie Futch.
Who
Okay.
happened to be, ironically, a great trainer, and earlier he had been Joe Frazier's trainer.
Right. It's really fascinating when the lines cross and you go to different corners. But why did Angelo choose to be in Jimmy Ellis's corner? Wasn't he a lot closer than him?
Very simple. He loved Ali, but Ali was very close to Jimmy also. And he felt that it really was, going in, it wasn't the best matchup. And he felt that Jimmy needed all the tools he could have. In this case, the mind of Angelo Dundee, which is ranked with Emmanuel Stewart and Gil Clancy and Eddie Futch and so many others over the years as a great training mind. He needed Angelo in his corner, and that's how they tried to make it. As it was, the fight went on for, it was a 12-round fight, went on for 11 rounds, and Ali truly pulled punches. He didn't want to hurt his friend, and there was never any doubt as to the outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. Ali dominated that fight. Now, of course, you were involved with many boxing promotions and Ali Frazier as well. How did that come about? How did you get these two heavyweight champions?
Well, that's interesting. I think that's an interesting story. Ali had been out of the fight game for 3 years. And Frazier was the reigning champion, having gone through an elimination, taking on all comers. But the names like Ernie Shavers was one, and Jimmy Ellis, of course, was another, and another was a guy named Roy Peterson. But they all faded by the wayside, Jerry Quarry, as Frazier emerged to the top. So he was undefeated. If you remember when Ali was suspended, he was undefeated. And so March 8, 1971 was settled as a date for the fight. It all came about when a friend of mine, Franklin Freed, who owned a music promotion company in Chicago called Triangle Productions, was friendly with a guy named Hendler, who is a trash commissioner, garbage commissioner, in the state of Illinois. And he had learned that now that Ali's suspension was lifted, Ali would love to fight Frazier. Now remember, Ali was rusty, he hadn't fought anybody at all. Well, they needed the money, and they came to a very old friend of mine, Jerry Parencio, who was able to raise the money. And the primary money came from, and this was my first instance of meeting Jack Kent Cooke, came from Jack Kent Cooke. And the fight was put together. My job primarily was to handle a promotion worldwide, get the marketing, and I used the modus operandi I used so many times. I took Ali on a whirlwind tour of some 31 cities, never leaving the airport, where in 2 weeks we had 31 press conferences and boxing exhibitions. The fight was March 8th, as I said, 1971. It was a terrific battle, and the only time in history that two undefeated world champions in the same weight division were to meet. And it was a great fight, could have gone either way. As rusty as he was, Ali danced, and that's where Boudini Brown, Drew Brown is his name, coined the phrase, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, which became synonymous with Ali's style of boxing. And in the, I believe it was 12th round, it might have been the 13th, it was the only knockdown in the fight, and it was a knockdown. Frasier just tagged him. Ali went down, but he came up, but Frasier won the fight. The other two battles that we did were epic battles, and perhaps in the eyes of boxing men who were around then and many who have reviewed the films to this day, or the tapes, or the digitized, whatever they are, think that the Thriller in Manila was probably the greatest fight that has ever taken place between two classic heavyweight boxers.
That fight truly epic. It was a brutal fight, very devastating. And
well, a lot of people don't know, and I was there. First of all, the heat was, and the humidity, it were 102 degrees, it was 110 degrees with humidity in the ring.
Wow.
And Joe Frazier, Eddie Futch, threw in the towel at the end of the 14th round, and Joe didn't come out. But if he hadn't, Angelo Dundee was supporting. Freddie Pichette was on the side, holding Ali up, because Ali was about to collapse to the floor. Many people don't know that.